You checked your blood pressure this morning. The numbers looked fine, maybe even good. You took your medication. You felt well. You have no reason to think anything is wrong, and that is exactly the problem I need to talk to you about today. Because the reading you took this morning may be the least important blood pressure reading of your entire day. I'm going to count down 3 specific tests from number 3 to number 1 that reveal what your cardiovascular system is doing during the 8 hours nobody is watching. And number 1 is the test that can show whether you are among the more than half of adults over 65 who are carrying a cardiovascular risk 3 times higher than their daytime readings suggest. Stay with me through all 3. What you hear today could be the most important thing you bring to your next doctor's appointment. Let me start by asking you to think about a specific kind of morning that you may have had more than once. You slept a full night, 7, maybe 8 hours. Nothing dramatic happened, no nightmares, no noise, nothing obvious to explain why you woke up the way you did. But when you got out of bed and stood at the window or sat at the kitchen table waiting for the coffee to brew, there was a heaviness in your head. Not pain, something more diffuse than pain, a fogginess, a sense that your body did not fully reset during the night the way it was supposed to. Your thinking was slower than usual in the first hour. Your energy felt borrowed rather than genuine. You attributed it to sleeping badly, to stress, to age. You moved through the morning, and by noon you felt normal. And then it happened again a few weeks later, and again after that. You probably never connected that morning heaviness to your blood pressure. Almost no one does. But in my more than 30 years of cardiovascular practice, I have learnt to ask about it directly. Because that specific pattern, that heavy morning that follows a night of apparently adequate sleep, is one of the most consistent descriptions I hear from patients whose nighttime blood pressure is doing something their morning reading will never reveal. Think about what your heart monitor or your blood pressure cuff captures when you visit your doctor. 30 seconds, maybe 60, if the nurse is being careful. 30 seconds out of the 86,400 seconds that make up your day. And the treatment decisions, the medication choices, the reassurance that your numbers are fine, all of it is built on those 30 seconds. For most of the remaining 86,370 seconds, you are on your own, and roughly a third of those seconds, you are asleep, completely unaware, unable to feel what is happening, unable to report it, unable to respond. This is the cardiovascular monitoring gap that most patients never know exists. And for many adults over 60, it is precisely during those sleeping hours that the most damaging pressure events of their entire day are quietly occurring. You are not imagining the morning heaviness. And the fact that your office reading looks fine does not mean you are fine. Here is the number I want you to hold through this entire video. A number that I have watched change how patients think about their own health in a single moment. More than 50% of adults over 65 are what cardiologists call non-dippers. More than half. Under normal healthy conditions, blood pressure drops by 10 to 20% during sleep, every single night. This nighttime dip is not a bonus. It is when your cardiovascular system performs its essential overnight maintenance. The heart muscle repairs itself, blood vessels recover elasticity, the kidneys process waste and regulate fluid balance, the brain clears inflammatory debris. All of it depends on that pressure drop. When it does not happen, when pressure stays elevated or climbs higher during sleep, those repair and recovery processes are impaired every single night. They fail to occur. Non-dippers carry 3 times the cardiovascular mortality risk of people with identical daytime readings. The same office number, the same medication, the same diet. 3 times the risk from what happens during those 8 hours of sleep. And yet most of those people will never be identified, because nobody is taking the measurement that would find them. The question I want you to hold is this. How do you find out which category you are in? How do you know whether your nighttime pressure is doing the right thing or the wrong thing? Right now, tonight, while you sleep. That answer is coming. It is the most important thing in this video. But first, you need to understand why the nighttime pressure problem develops, and what may be making it worse in your home right now without your knowledge. My name is Dr. Jane. I spent more than 30 years in clinical cardiology and cardiovascular medicine. And the thing that has stayed with me most The thing I think about when I consider what information most needs to reach people who are managing their cardiovascular health after 60 is not the medications, not the procedures, not the emergency interventions. In clinical medicine, we have extraordinary tools for treating cardiovascular disease once it has expressed itself dramatically. We can open blocked arteries. We can replace valves. We can regulate dangerous rhythms with devices that fit in the palm of your hand. What we are far less good at, and what the standard system of office-based care is almost structurally incapable of providing, is catching the slow, silent, nocturnal accumulation of pressure damage before it produces a catastrophic event. I have stood at bedsides after strokes, after major cardiac events. I have had conversations with families in waiting rooms that no one should have to have. And in a significant proportion of those cases, particularly in patients over 60, the warning was already there, in data that was never collected, in nighttime pressure readings nobody took, in test results that were never ordered because nobody thought to ask. That gap between the warning that existed and the detection that never happened, that is what this video is about. Closing that gap is within your reach. It costs almost nothing. It requires one informed conversation with your physician. And it begins with understanding three things: the biological reason your nighttime pressure is vulnerable after 60, the factors in your home that may be making it worse right now, and the three specific tests that will tell you exactly where you stand. Before we dive in, if you're finding this useful, take 2 seconds right now, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video, and give this a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people like you find this content. And drop a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. I'd love to know where our community is tuning in from around the world. Hold on a second. Before we go any further, I've put something together for you. It's called the Glucose Paradox. It's a free guide on blood sugar and diabetes, and you can grab it for free through the link in the description. I'm telling you this now because I want you to finish this video with a concrete tool in your hands. To get it right away, just click the link in the description, head over to my site, and drop your email. You'll receive the guide in your inbox a few minutes later, but I don't want to take up any more of your time. Let's get back to the video. Before I explain the biology, I want to tell you about Richard. Richard was 67 years old, a retired civil engineer from Sacramento, California. He was the kind of patient who prepared for appointments. He kept a log. He tracked his morning readings for 3 years, and when he sat across from me, he could show me a spreadsheet going back to his last medication adjustment. His numbers looked good, consistently in the 120s over the upper 70s. His cardiologist was pleased. He was pleased. He felt well. He came to me not because anything was wrong, but because his wife had read something about nighttime blood pressure and had insisted he ask about it. He was slightly reluctant. His numbers were fine. What was there to investigate? I asked him about his mornings, whether he woke refreshed or foggy, whether his thinking was clear immediately, or whether the first hour of the day felt like pushing through something. He paused. Then he said, "I thought that was just aging." I sent him home with a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor. When the data came back, the picture was stark. His daytime readings were exactly what his home monitor showed: controlled, stable, well within range. But at 11:30 at night, after he had been asleep for roughly 40 minutes, his pressure began climbing. By 1 in the morning, it was 158 over 96. By 2:30, it was 164 over 100. His lowest pressure of the entire 24-hour period was when he was sitting at his kitchen table in the late afternoon. His highest was at 3 in the morning, while he was deeply, peacefully, completely unaware asleep. He was not a non-dipper. He was a reverse dipper, the pattern where pressure is actually higher during sleep than during the day. The pattern associated with a 4 to 5 times increase in stroke risk, in patients who feel completely fine during a standard office visit. He looked at the graph from the monitor for a long time. Then he said, quietly, 3 years of this data, and I never knew any of this was happening. 3 years of good numbers, 3 years of reassurance, 3 years of nighttime crisis that nobody was measuring. Let me explain why this happens and why it becomes more common and more dangerous after 60. Your blood pressure is controlled by a system called the autonomic nervous system. the part of your nervous system that manages the body's involuntary functions, including heart rate, vessel constriction, and the precise calibration of pressure throughout the day. During the day, the sympathetic branch of this system keeps everything appropriately activated. At night, the parasympathetic branch takes over, the calming counterpart, and pressure falls as part of the transition to rest and repair. Think of this balance like a well-tuned dimmer switch. During the day, the lights are appropriately bright. At night, someone gradually turns them down so the room can rest. In a young, healthy cardiovascular system, this switch is precise and reliable. After 60, several things change simultaneously. The arteries gradually stiffen, losing the elastic give and take that allows them to absorb pressure fluctuations smoothly. The autonomic nervous system's timing becomes less precise. The signals that should trigger nighttime pressure reduction arrive late, arrive inconsistently, or don't arrive with their full strength. And the medications most people take for blood pressure, taken in the morning as convention dictates, have largely worn off by midnight, leaving the night unprotected at exactly the hours when protection is most needed. This is why non-dipping and reverse dipping become so much more common after 60. It is not one failure. It is the convergence of multiple age-related changes in a system that can no longer compensate the way it once did. And here is where the hidden factors in your home enter the picture. Because in addition to these biological changes, there are specific things that many adults over 60 are doing in the evenings, things that feel harmless or even beneficial, that are directly worsening their nighttime pressure without their knowledge. The first one will surprise you. Go to your tea cabinet right now, or picture it in your mind, and think about what you drink in the evenings. If you have an herbal tea that you use to wind down before bed, something described as calming, soothing, relaxing, I need you to read its label carefully tonight. Specifically, I need you to look for one ingredient, licorice root. It appears under several names: glycyrrhiza, sweet root, DGL in some forms, and sometimes buried inside natural flavoring or proprietary herbal blend in products that don't fully disclose their ingredients. And licorice root contains a compound called glycyrrhizin that blocks a specific enzyme in your kidneys. When that enzyme is suppressed, cortisol, your primary stress hormone, accumulates in the bloodstream rather than being broken down. Elevated cortisol at night is a direct signal to your blood vessels to constrict. Your pressure rises. You do not feel it happening. You simply wake up foggy, unrested, and slightly heavy in the head, and attribute it to not sleeping well. The licorice root tea you drank for its calming properties elevated your blood pressure for 6 hours while you slept. This is not a rare or exotic interaction. It is well documented in medical literature, and it is almost never on anyone's radar in a routine medical appointment. The second hidden factor is evening alcohol. And what I am about to describe genuinely surprises most moderate drinkers, because the experience of alcohol, the relaxation, the slight pressure drop that accompanies the first drink, feels beneficial. And in the immediate short term, it is. The initial sedative effect of alcohol does transiently lower blood pressure. That part is real. But 3 to 4 hours later, right in the middle of the deepest stage of sleep, something else begins. Your sympathetic nervous system, the activating branch, overcorrects. It has been suppressed by the alcohol, and now it surges back with force. Cortisol rises sharply. Your heart rate climbs. Your blood pressure can reach its highest point of the entire 24-hour cycle at 2 or 3 in the morning, directly following a glass of wine with dinner. Not a heavy drinking night. An ordinary, moderate evening drink several hours before bed. The rebound is real, it is documented, and it is happening whether you feel it or not. The third hidden factor is grapefruit juice, specifically in people taking calcium channel blockers, like amlodipine, which are among the most commonly prescribed blood pressure medications for adults over 60. Grapefruit contains a family of compounds called furanocoumarins that block an enzyme in the liver called CYP3A4. This enzyme is responsible for breaking down calcium channel blockers in your bloodstream. When it is blocked, the medication accumulates beyond its intended concentration. What was designed to produce a gradual, controlled, predictable pressure reduction becomes unpredictable. The drug lingers, the effect deepens, At night, when you are horizontal, unmonitored, and unable to report symptoms, that unpredictability is most dangerous. Check whether you are on a calcium channel blocker. If you are, grapefruit juice in any amount, at any time of day, should not be in your daily routine. You are not imagining that your mornings sometimes feel wrong despite doing everything right. The tea cabinet, the evening drink, the morning glass of juice. These are real and correctable factors. And now that you know them, you can address them tonight. That is number 3. Now let me build toward the 3 tests. But first, a second story. Eleanor was 71 years old, a retired librarian from Nashville, Tennessee. She had been on blood pressure medication for 8 years and had what her physician described as well-controlled hypertension. Her medication had been adjusted twice over those years. She was adherent. She never missed a dose. She exercised. She watched her sodium intake. She did everything correctly. She came to see me because she had experienced what her previous physician had described as a minor cardiovascular event, a transient ischemic attack, a brief disruption of blood flow to the brain that resolved completely within 20 minutes, but left her, she said, permanently afraid. She wanted to understand how this had happened when her blood pressure was controlled. When I reviewed her history and asked about her medication schedule, I found that she had been taking her medication, a standard angiotensin-converting enzyme inhibitor, every morning at 7. By midnight, its protective effect had significantly diminished. She was a reverse dipper. Her pressure was highest between 11 at night and 4 in the morning. She had been taking a medication specifically designed to lower pressure at exactly the hours of the day when her pressure was naturally lowest. The mismatch between her medication timing and her blood pressure pattern had persisted for 8 years. Her office readings, taken at morning appointments when her medication was near its peak effect, had shown excellent control throughout. The nighttime picture had never been captured. I changed her medication to bedtime dosing after reviewing her full 24-hour profile. At her 3-month follow-up, her nighttime reverse dipping pattern had resolved. Her morning readings, which had always looked good, looked essentially the same. But the nighttime picture, the part that had been driving her risk, had been fundamentally corrected by a change in timing, not a change in dose. She said something at that appointment that I have used in teaching settings since. She said I was taking the right medication. I was just taking it at the wrong time. 8 years. Now we are at the exact midpoint of this video, and I want to bring back both questions I asked you to hold. The first, how do you find out whether you are a non-dipper or a reverse dipper? The second, what does 3 times the cardiovascular risk mean in practical terms for someone whose office readings look perfectly fine? The answer to both is the same. You need data that your current monitoring approach is not providing, and that data comes from 3 specific tests: available, affordable, and almost never ordered without a direct and specific request. Here they are in order. Number 3 is urine microalbumin. The symptom I want you to anchor this to is something you may never have noticed, because it requires looking for it deliberately. Occasionally, after a period of elevated pressure, urine may appear slightly foamy when it hits the water in the bowl, a surface foam that holds for a moment before dispersing. Most people see it once and forget it. It is easy to miss. It is easy to dismiss, and it is one of the earliest signs that your kidneys are under sustained pressure stress. Albumin is a protein that healthy kidneys retain in the blood, rather than allowing into urine. When kidney filtering structures are under chronic pressure, the kind produced by sustained nighttime hypertension, they begin to leak tiny amounts of albumin into the urine, amounts too small to produce symptoms, amounts too small to be detected by a standard urinalysis, but detectable by a microalbumin test, which is specifically designed to find those trace amounts before kidney damage has progressed to a stage where it shows up on any other measurement. Think of urine microalbumin as the earliest possible warning signal for kidney injury from blood pressure, appearing years before kidney function visibly declines, years before creatinine rises, years before anything else in your blood work changes. It is a warning while there is still meaningful time to change the course. This test requires only a urine sample. It is inexpensive. It is available at any laboratory. And it is almost never included in a standard annual blood panel unless you ask for it by name. Write it down. Urine microalbumin. That is test number 3. Number 2 is oxidized LDL. And I need to briefly reframe how you think about cholesterol before this makes sense. You know LDL as the so-called bad cholesterol. But LDL on its own, simply circulating in your bloodstream, is not the problem. LDL becomes dangerous through a process called oxidation, the same chemical process that turns butter rancid, that rusts metal, that makes a cut apple brown. When LDL particles are exposed to free radicals, which are produced in abundance by sustained high blood pressure, by chronic inflammation, by the kind of arterial wall stress that nighttime hypertension generates, those LDL particles become chemically altered. Oxidized LDL. And oxidized LDL is what your immune system attacks, creating the foam cells and inflammatory plaques that are the structural foundation of arterial disease. Your standard cholesterol panel measures the quantity of LDL in your blood. It does not measure how much of it is oxidized. You can have a completely normal LDL number, while a significant proportion of those particles are oxidized and actively damaging your arterial walls. The standard panel will not detect this. Your cardiologist will look at your numbers and tell you everything is fine. Oxidized LDL is a direct marker of arterial wall damage, specifically the kind of damage that sustained nighttime hypertension accelerates. It costs somewhat more than a standard cholesterol test, but it is available through most commercial laboratories and can be ordered by any physician. Ask for it by name. Oxidized LDL. That is number 2. And here it is. Number 1. The test that answers the question you have been building toward since the beginning of this video. The test that will tell you definitively whether you are a dipper, a non-dipper, or a reverse dipper, and therefore what your actual cardiovascular risk profile is, not the office visit approximation of it. ABPM, ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. You wear a small, lightweight monitor for 24 hours, a cuff on your upper arm connected to a small recording device that fits in a shirt pocket or clips to a belt. It takes automatic readings every 30 minutes throughout the day and night. You sleep with it. You go about your normal life with it. And when you return the device the following day, the data it contains is the most complete single-day cardiovascular profile available in clinical medicine outside of an intensive care unit. The data shows your average daytime pressure, your average nighttime pressure, your nighttime dipping percentage, whether your pressure dropped the 10 to 20% it should during sleep. And if you are a non-dipper or reverse dipper, the monitor will show it with precision, when the pressure stays elevated, when it rises, and by how much. This is the gold standard for nighttime blood pressure assessment. It is the only way to know what is actually happening during those 8 hours. And it directly answers whether the morning fogginess you have been experiencing, the heaviness that follows a night of adequate sleep, has a pressure-related explanation that your morning reading was never going to capture. ABPM has been available for decades. It is widely covered by insurance for patients with hypertension. And most people over 65 who have been managing their blood pressure for years have never worn one. Not because their physicians do not know about it, because it requires a specific request. It is not part of routine hypertension management in most practices. If you walk into your next appointment and say the words, "I'd like an ambulatory blood pressure monitor," your physician knows what you mean, knows how to order it, and will almost certainly be able to arrange it. Write it down. ABPM. That is test number 1. And it is the piece of information most likely to change the clinical picture for someone whose daytime numbers look fine. Now let me give you the solutions, because knowing the problem without knowing what to do about it is not helpful. The most overlooked solution, and the one with the most dramatic supporting evidence, is the timing of when you take your blood pressure medication. This is a conversation, not a decision you make unilaterally. I want to be clear about that. Do not change your medication timing without speaking with your physician first. Some medications genuinely should not be taken at bedtime, particularly diuretics, which will send you to the bathroom repeatedly and disrupt your sleep. Your physician needs to review your specific case, but the conversation is absolutely worth having, because the evidence behind it is extraordinary. The high-wire chronotherapy trial followed 20,000 patients for 6 years one of the largest cardiovascular trials ever conducted on a single lifestyle intervention. Researchers compared patients taking their blood pressure medications in the morning against the same patients taking identical medications at bedtime. Everything else was equal. The bedtime group showed nearly 50% lower rates of heart attack, stroke, and cardiovascular death. 50% reduction from changing the timing of a medication, not the medication itself, not the dose, not a new prescription, just when during the day they took what they already had. For Eleanor, changing from morning to bedtime dosing resolved her reverse dipping pattern entirely, whose nighttime pressure surged while their morning medication coverage had worn off. Bedtime dosing provides protection precisely during the hours of highest vulnerability. One question at one appointment. That is the entire intervention. The second solution belongs in your kitchen, and it involves something sitting quietly on the shelves of most health food stores. Dried hibiscus flowers. Not hibiscus tea bags, not hibiscus blends, dried hibiscus flowers, the sepals of Hibiscus sabdarifera. Hibiscus contains compounds called anthocyanins, the same class of molecules responsible for the deep color in blueberries and pomegranates, that are powerful antioxidants, neutralizing the free radicals that oxidize LDL and damage arterial walls. But hibiscus does something else that is pharmacologically specific. It inhibits ACE, the angiotensin-converting enzyme, the same enzyme that a major class of blood pressure medications, ACE inhibitors, targets. This is not a coincidence, and it is not folk medicine. It is a documented pharmacological mechanism studied in multiple independent clinical trials. Published research has consistently shown reductions of 8 to 14 millimeters of mercury in systolic pressure in patients with mild to moderate hypertension who drink hibiscus tea daily. That is a clinically meaningful reduction. Preparation matters more than most people realize. Weak hibiscus tea has minimal therapeutic effect. Use 10 grams of dried hibiscus flowers, not tea bags, actual flowers. Heat water to 90 degrees Celsius, not boiling. Steep for 10 to 15 minutes minimum. When it is ready, it should be a deep burgundy, almost like dark red wine. If it looks pale pink, steep it longer. 3 cups per day is the dose studied in the clinical literature. But the most strategically important cup is the one you drink 1 to 2 hours before sleep. That is the timing window where it has the most meaningful impact on what your pressure does during the night. If you are already on blood pressure medication, tell your physician before you begin drinking hibiscus regularly. The combined effect is additive. This is not a reason to avoid it. It is a reason for a 5-minute conversation that your doctor will appreciate you having. Before the conclusion, let me come back to Richard. Richard, the retired civil engineer from Sacramento with the spreadsheet. The man who thought his good numbers meant he was fine. The man whose pressure reached 164/100 at 3 in the morning while he believed he was sleeping safely. He changed 3 things. He stopped drinking his calming herbal tea in the evenings. It had contained licorice root. He moved his evening glass of wine from just before bed to with dinner, 2 hours earlier. And with his cardiologist's guidance, his medication was shifted to bedtime dosing after his full 24-hour profile was reviewed. At his 3-month follow-up, wearing the ambulatory monitor again, his nighttime pressure pattern had fundamentally changed. His previous readings of 164/100 at 2 in the morning were gone. His nighttime average was in the 120s. He had crossed from reverse dipper to normal dipper in 3 months, through changes that cost him nothing and required no new prescriptions. He sent me a note after the follow-up results. He said 3 years of good numbers, and I had no idea what was happening at night. Now I do, and now it's different. Now it's different. That is what information and the right questions can do. Think back to how you pressed play on this video, perhaps with the assumption that your blood pressure was managed, that your numbers looked fine, and that meant you were fine. Perhaps with that quiet morning heaviness that you had been attributing to age and poor sleep. Here is what you know now. You know that more than half of adults over 65 are non-dippers, carrying 3 times the cardiovascular risk of people with identical daytime readings, and that this is almost never detected by routine care. You know that licorice root evening alcohol, and grapefruit juice with certain medications can be silently worsening your nighttime pressure right now. You know that 3 specific tests, urine microalbumin, oxidized LDL, and ABPM, provide the clinical picture that no standard office appointment was designed to capture. You know that medication timing, supported by a 20,000 patient trial showing 50% cardiovascular risk reduction, is worth one direct conversation with your physician. And you know that properly prepared hibiscus tea has genuine replicated clinical evidence as a daily supporting measure. Richard said, "Now I do, and now it's different." That transition from not knowing to knowing, from undetected risk to addressed risk, is available to you. Tonight, check the labels in your tea cabinet. Tomorrow, write down 3 words on a piece of paper: ABPM, microalbumin, oxidized LDL. Put it with your insurance card. Bring it to your next appointment. That piece of paper, and the conversation it starts, is what bridges the gap between the cardiovascular system that is functioning quietly in the dark while you sleep, and the care that is designed to protect it. Your heart has been working for you every hour of every night of your entire life, without complaint, without pause, without asking for anything in return. It deserves to have someone asking the right questions on its behalf. Now you know exactly what those questions are. Take good care of yourself. You have earned it. And hey, if you made it all the way here, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button to let me know this was worth your time, and leave a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. Seriously, I read every single one, and it means a lot to see how far this community reaches. You know what the problem is with diabetes and high blood sugar? Most people find out way too late, and by the time they do, they have no idea where to even start. That's why I decided to create a free guide. It's called The Glucose Paradox, and inside, you'll find everything you wish you'd known sooner. I'll explain how blood sugar actually works, and why your body sometimes reacts the exact opposite way you'd expect. That's why it's called a paradox. I've also included concrete habits you can start changing right now, even if you know zero about nutrition or medicine. It's free, you can download it in a second. And it might be the single most useful thing you do for your health today. Just click the link in the description to head to the site, drop your email, and get the guide sent straight to you. Don't put this off.